Today's episode of Bitcoin People proudly brought to you by WeSpeakInBitcoin.com, bringing you the biggest names in Bitcoin for speaking engagements and sponsorship opportunities. Enjoy today's chat. Hello, I'm incredibly excited today to have on our little show here, Okin from Namibia. Hello and welcome to Bitcoin People.
Good day, everybody, and thanks for having me on.
Was that your effort at being Australian? Was your good day trying to be like an Australian g'day?
Oh, no, that's actually my good day, everybody.
Oh, that's how yeah, right, okay. So, because lots of people try and do like this Australian g'day and they mess it up really badly.
I'm really bad at accents all around, so I just use the one I have.
So that was just your good day, and a good day back to you. Morning over there, afternoon over here. You've got the whole day ahead of you, and I've got the evening ahead of me, and we get to take a moment out of our respective lives to have this conversation. Okin, you're an amazing human being. You've got a backstory and a career that is just deeply fascinating, and I think perhaps this is going to sound a little voyeuristic, but I think perhaps to me, as someone in a very small corner of the world in, Melbourne, Australia, I've never visited Africa, certainly not Namibia. I know very little about it. I would love to hear something about the country, but I would also love to hear something about your upbringing, your family, your schooling, and kind of get a taste of not only the country broadly, but kind of specifically your experience of it as well.
Okay, well, that's actually a great question, since it's been a while since somebody asked me that. So I'm from Namibia, which is literally, for those that don't know, it's right above South Africa, right underneath Angola, on that western coast. That entire stretch of land is Namibia. So Namibia is one of the least populous, like, density. Like, when you talk about how many people per square meter, like, we're literally second in the world behind Inner Mongolia.
Oh,
And
wow.
our country is way bigger than Inner Mongolia. So our country is roughly the size of South Africa, give or take a bit more. So it's really big, and there's very few people. I mean, Botswana, which is just one of our neighbors, has the same population as we have. So it's about 1.7 million
yeah.
people.
They're a tiny country.
They're a tiny country, they're landlocked, but they have literally the same population as we have, but their currency is way stronger. Like, their currency is stronger than the South African rand, even, believe it or not. So yeah. Botswana's got a lot of resources.
Why is Botswana so strong? What have they got
All
going
the
on?
resources that they have. They have gold, diamonds, everything. They have almost anything you can think about, Botswana has as well. So even the resources we have, they also have.
What's the kind of income distribution? So it might be a wealthy country, but do the average kind of person on the street get to partake in it?
No. It's more that their currency is strong than they are not. As you know, you still get a lot of poor people. The wealth gap is still pretty big. Like most African countries, that wealth gap is just a very big factor. But yeah, so
sorry, can I also just, I'm going to have so many questions. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but tell me, why are you so undensely populated? I don't know what the word is there, so sparsely populated, while Botswana is so popular. Is that because of the resource allocation, that people are drawn in there and they've got jobs there to do the mining, to do, kind of whatever it is around the resource sector?
No, so this also goes back to Namibia's history of colonization, right? What happened was, when you go back to the First World War, right, what was called the Kaiser's Holocaust. There's a book that you can read. It's called the Kaiser's Holocaust, and it speaks about the first genocide that Germany created, and it happened in Namibia, which was then called Southwest Africa, right? So they put up concentration camps here. And basically everything that happened to the Jews during World War II was perfected on the Namibians, right? On two tribes, the Oshierero and the Damaras, right? So what happened was, is it the Damaras or the Namas? I'm not too sure right now, but I think it's the Damaras. Yeah, if I'm correct, it's the Damaras. So what happened was, I think it was von Trotter was the the chieftain or whatever of Germany at the point in time, and he literally went and said, look, there's an extermination order on all heteros and most Damara people, right? And saying that basically what happened was, if you were found as an Oshiherero person in Namibia, you were sent to a concentration camp and then basically tortured to death, right? Then what
God.
happened was, a lot of basically the order was leave Namibia or die. So a lot of people went through the desert, right, and died in the desert trying to cross the desert into Botswana. And that's why you have a lot of Oshiherero people in Botswana as well. So a lot of people migrated out of Namibia for fear of their life, also into Botswana. That's why you'll find like a lot of families have been separated on the side of the border because of that. And then it just got, from time, they just stayed there and they lived there. They became Botswanan, right? So now this extermination order was so bad that they literally took human skulls back to Germany, right? Like we just got back some of the skulls last year, and they put them in museums there so that people could go and look at them, right? And they were trying to, a lot of it was also for experimentation to like prove that Black people are inferior to white people biologically, right? They were doing a lot of these tests to try and prove these things. And it's also why they went along the way of what they said about the Jews, because this is literally something that they did. Like they had concentration camps that were then taken over by things like they built churches on top of on top of these sites. There were mass graves. I think there's still a couple of sites where you can find mass graves in Namibia. From this, I mean, they even found graves when the U.S. embassy was building their new embassy in the capital where I live, Windhoek. They found skeletons. So like a lot of things in the history of Namibia are and that was just the German colonization. Then you have to remember, after World War II, what happened was what was the League of Nations back then, what we now call what's it called now anyway? But anyway, it was called the League of Nations back then. Correct. So it was called the League of Nations back then, and then they gave oversight after the Second World War. They gave oversight of Namibia to South Africa, right? Yeah. And South Africa was supposed to help Namibia, you know, come to the norm of the day and everything. But what South Africa did was it exploited Namibia and then imposed apartheid onto Namibia that was also imposed in South Africa, right? So Namibia got hit again. And then we only finished, like we got independence in 1990. 1990, Namibia got independence and from South Africa and became Namibia, because we were actually called Southwest Africa before 1990, right? Yeah. Still from the German name that we had, which was a direction. It's not, you're in the southwest of Africa, like it's not a country name. And then 1990, we got independence from South Africa. And 1994, South Africa liberated itself from apartheid, let's call it that. Yeah, so that's kind of the history that leads to how there's so few people in Namibia, but Botswana's got some of the same amounts, and some of them moved from Namibia because they literally had to move or die.
So tell me your family's history with that. What happened there? How did they end up either staying in Namibia or coming back to Namibia or coming into Namibia? What happened with your family around all of that?
Well, that's the crazy thing. So a lot of Namibian families, especially if you like Oshiherero, if you've got Oshiherero in your blood, or like, so you have to remember, like, okay, so you had the time of the Germans being here, right? During colonization. Now, during that time, a lot of like murders and rape happened. So a lot of people became products of rape, right? Yeah. And generations later, you know, and then you're there. Now, also what happened was you had the missionaries come in. And they also liked Black women, and then all of a sudden, you know, you also mixed there. And then you had where were we now? And then when the South African armies and everything, like, so then you had the UN coming as peacekeepers. A lot of them also ended up having kids out here. So you have a very, very mixed society. Namibia is one of the most, like when I say mixed, I went to school from young, right, with little white boys. They were around me. It wasn't like, oh, I was only around Black kids or only around what we call colored people, which are like a mix, like it's an actual ethnic group within Africa. Like right. in America, colored is seen like a derogatory term for Black people or whatever. In Namibia, it's a totally different a tribal group, if you want to call it tribes,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's different.
yeah. And a neutral
So
term that just simply describes this group.
correct.
Yeah,
It's not just yeah.
yeah.
So it's they are actually their own people. Then you have like Oshiro, like you could call them a tribe if you want to. Like you have different black tribes and even white people. For us, I would say generally our tribes. You have the Afrikaner white people and then you have German white people, right?
All
Both
right.
are Namibian born, but their heritages are different.
Yep.
So that and you also have English white people that are born in Namibia. So like
Mhm.
it's very diverse. It's one of the
Right.
most diverse places I've ever been.
And so your family were there
Yeah, so
throughout from the
so with
beginning?
my family, it
Yeah,
becomes a thing of okay, a lot of missionaries and what are also I have that blood within my family. So like my mother is from the coast. Actually, both my parents are from the coast of Namibia, so they're
yeah.
coastal people. I was born literally in the dead center in the capital. Like my parents aren't from the capital, just myself and my siblings, right? We're the ones that are from Windhoek. The rest, my mom's from Walfish Bay, my dad's from Swakopmund originally. And then they've got family that also spans out. So like it's kind of one of those things that yeah, but anyway, so my family is a very politically inclined family. My dad was during apartheid when they were fighting for independence, my dad was part of and my mother were part of the now ruling party, which is SWAPO, which stands for the Southwest African People's Organization.
Hmm.
But again, this is now basically what happens in Africa most of the time is the party that brings you liberation ends up being the party that stays in power for most of the time,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and now during the war or near the end, my dad was the Secretary General of SWAPO, and then he became the first Deputy Minister of Information,
Hmm.
um, and then from there, but he was like a very oral person. He gave many speeches, spoke to the UN a lot about, during literally the struggle about why Namibia needs to determine its own future and not have it dictated to it by South Africa along
Hmm.
South African lines and things like that. He was actually a journalist by profession. And then, of course, during the war, he was one of the people that they targeted. He was arrested almost every day and tortured. He ended up, passing away as a result of all those years of torture. Um, but yeah, he ended up passing away in '97. But at that time, he was no longer in government. He was he was the Director General of the National Broadcasting Corporation of Namibia. It's called the NBC. So he passed away in '97. And then my mother, very strong woman. She was actually a nurse by profession originally. And then she trained a lot of the nurses that, like, most of them are like, "Oh, you're Agnes's child." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't know how you know my mother," but like, "No, she trained me." And I'm like, "Oh, you are old. How did my mother train you?" And then I forget how old she is. But yeah, and then from there, my dad also, we are also very into sports. My dad was I guess, probably the first president of the Namibian Olympic Committee.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Fabulous.
yeah, and then so we were always into sports. Sports was actually, I'll give you that one. It was actually it played a big part in how Namibia got independence. But and then my mother, she was always into sports, netball and everything. She was the president of the NNOC, Namibian national something else, not the Olympic Committee, it was another one, I can't remember. And then after a while, they actually asked her if she would stand for the president of the Olympic Committee, which she held for about 14 years. I think she held that position. They just kept voting her back in. And then she got called up by government. So I'm one of the only people ever to have both parents be deputy ministers. And then my mother became the Minister of Sport, Youth, and National Service back in 2015, I think it was.
Good for
So
her.
yeah, I've always been in politics. Like as
Yeah.
a family, we've always been surrounded by politics. Yeah.
Amazing background. Wow, what a unique upbringing. So, how did all of that affect you? Like the history of the country, the history of your father in particular?
Mhm.
Um, how did all of that affect you as a child? How's that affected you psychologically as you've grown up?
I mean, it was again, I was really young. Like I'm an 80s baby and late 80s
Yeah.
baby. So, by the time like I was conscious of things around me, like apartheid had ended. Like we were now liberated. We were in Namibia. At that time, I was already 3, 4 years old, So I was like, hey, okay, I don't know what all this partying is about, and everybody's happy, but let's go. And so I didn't really, but my brother and my sister, they had it bad. I mean, they were running from Kufuta, running under like, and the thing was back then, Namibians were really about the people, right? Like you'd be running from like South African forces and stuff, and people would grab you because they were looking for the kids of politically connected, people. And they were literally searching for these kids. And people would like, I hear the stories all the time from like family members and stuff, and they would grab my sister them off of the street, throw them under beds in like houses they've never been to. And none of them were touched. All of them got home safe. It was to keep them safe. It wasn't anything of abducting kids off the street. And back then, I can't talk about like the 90s, things got crazy, but in the 80s, it was really about keeping people safe and like, especially the kids. And it was a different time. I mean, my brother had an AK-47 shoved into his mouth as a child. Like these are things that aren't foreign concepts. They were there. It was the truth. So for me, it had a different impact than it, of course, did for my brother then, but we still grew up in the same house. We had the same stories that were being told. So, a lot of it was to say, I think my childhood was pretty great, to be honest with you. I mean, I got to party with, we lived in the hood. We lived in like what we call the hood in Windhoek, like Karatura. It's not an affluent area, you know what I'm saying? But we had fun. We were playing street soccer, eating off of trees, little things. But what we were doing with that was also, again, this is what people call the hood. You have little white kids in the hood playing with little black kids. Why? Because we're all Namibians now, right? We're all together. So the 90s became a thing of how do we move together as a country? How do we heal and move forward? It might not have worked as much as good as people had wished, but I mean, I ended up going to schools and experiencing things. I mean, I swam with the national team. That wasn't something that I saw myself doing as a 5-year-old, 7-year-old. But when I turned 13, 14 years old, I was like, hey, let's go to the swimming pool and let's check this out because now I have another opportunity. And things started moving differently, right? So for me, it was more a thing of, I came at a time where Namibia was repairing itself and was really thinking about how do we become one nation, all of us, those that are trying to build a better Namibia. And in that, the spirit was, we're together in this. Of course, there was still racism and all of that, but for the most part, it was how do we move forward? How do we become friends? And like, what do you like? Oh, you also like what I like. Oh, let's play G.I. Joes, whatever, Like a lot of the barriers that a lot of people saw or had started breaking down because, people started working together instead of in opposition to each other.
Amazing. Okay, so how did that set you up politically? Where do you stand politically these days? You grew up in a hyper politically aware house. You've heard all the history. Your brother and sister have been really affected by what's gone on. You've had this glorious childhood, and so where does it leave you now politically? And kind of what are the political options and set up in Namibia?
Yeah, okay, well, that's a great question. So Namibia is it's very unique. So we have, okay, let's first start at the beginning. We have I'd say roughly 7 to 10 political parties, probably.
Okay.
The top 3 being SWAPO. Then you'd have the official opposition party, which is called PDM.
Mhm.
And then from there, your guess is as good as mine. Who would
A
be
bunch of smaller players. Okay.
it moves around, right?
Yeah.
So what generally happens is SWAPO used to have the overwhelming majority, and I'm talking about like close to 50-something% of votes, right? So like it became a thing where most people in the country were SWAPO supporters, right?
Mhm.
And even till today are. Now, for me, I believe in discussions. I believe in finding a solution through really discussing it with other people. Not your party might not have the solution, right? And another party might. And only through that discussion can you guys say, okay, look, I can see some of the merits in what you're saying, and we can work with that. But other things that you're saying we can't work with. And you can have that discussion. But if you're not having discussions, that becomes a problem. Now, in Namibia, luckily, a lot of these people, even though they're on opposite ends of political structures, they still speak to each other. A lot of them even personally still speak to each other, know each other from sporting events or whatever it is, right? Because again, we're not 10 million people.
Mm,
We're
I
not
get
that
that.
many people in
Yeah.
our country. So politically, I'd say, look, I was born into SWAPO. I'm a card-carrying SWAPO member, but I am a Namibian. And I believe that if we as a country, right, are prospering under some party rule, that's great. If we're not, that's not great, right? The whole point here is, are Namibians doing well? Are Namibians able to work, to feed themselves, to feed their kids without having to go and do something that might be illegal or
Yeah.
or cost them their freedom, right? Are they able to prosper in life?
Yeah.
Now, for me, if your focus is the Namibian people and uplifting their betterment, I'm with you.
Yeah.
But if your focus is let me get rich or let me do X, Y, Z and be your king, then I'm not so. And for me, that doesn't have a political line for me. It has either you're about the people, you want to work for the people and make Namibia the greatest thing that we've ever been part of, or you're not, right? And I think
And what is the politics right now? What's the
ooh, it's hot right now. So there's a lot of contentious things happening right now. Namibia's, remember, we have a lot of resources, right? Many resources. We've got gold, we've got diamonds, we've got fish. We have the world's deepest natural port in our, as in
Oh
Wafish
wow.
Bay.
So
What
you're a
is,
real trading
look it
hub,
up.
yeah?
It's literally, we were the hub, right? The transportation hub for Southern Africa since 2014. We lost it, or 2012. We lost it around 2015, 2016, because we just didn't do anything with having that title, even though things were moving through. Namibia didn't take advantage of that possibility. Now, with all these resources, and that's just some. We have uranium, we just found oil. Like, there's a lot that Namibia has, right? But
Wow, I'm
Namibian
moving to
people,
Namibia, man.
but this is the crazy thing. So Namibian people, on average, like our unemployment rate, something like I think 40%.
Right. Okay. There
So
is
you
that.
see, our youth unemployment is crazy high. We've got all these resources, but then you're starting to look at, okay, what's the percentage that Namibia gets from these resources? Like, it's our resources, but again, they don't get
Yeah.
refined here and all of that. So that is also, even though we have the resources, the percentage that's coming to Namibia and trickling down to the average citizen, it's not working. It's not
Yeah.
working. The
Yeah.
poor people are, you know what I'm saying? So the problem with the politics for me is too many people are thinking about a political game instead of the solutions that you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, of
it
course.
doesn't have to be whether I'm left wing or right wing when the
Yep.
problem is in the center for everybody.
Yep.
Right? If we have a drought, it doesn't matter which political party you support. You want water. so
Yeah.
so things
Yep.
like that for me matter more than the political parties. But that said, there is a lot of tension right now. We the Supreme Court, I think it was last week or the week before, made a ruling that, so in Namibia, for a very long time, it was illegal to be gay, as in illegal. Like when I was a kid, if you wore earrings as a man walking around, right, you would get them ripped out of your ears, ripped out, straight up and down. Then if your hair was like, it was a very weird time. Like, I had fun growing up, but there was some crazy like stuff going on. Don't want to swear, so I say stuff. But so there was a ruling that said if you were married as a gay couple outside of Namibia, you will now be recognized as a married couple in Namibia. The Supreme Court made that ruling, right?
Okay.
And people lost their minds. Traditional leaders, church leaders, they started losing their minds. They were like, no, not in our country. What? So now this is the whole crazy thing. So now the ruling party today is holding a press conference to announce itself on if it's going to ask the Supreme Court to repeal that judgment and say, no, it's not allowed in Namibia. Or if they're going to, I don't know, I doubt they'll endorse it, but it's literally become, within certain parties, it's become a thing amongst the party members that they're
Yeah.
arguing with each other. Within the ruling party, within the opposition, but everywhere people are now arguing with each other about, yo, should this, shouldn't this be, and all of that. So now that's a whole different discussion, right? And at the same time, we have the unemployment problem. We have this green hydrogen blow up that's coming because like Germany and everybody's now investing in Namibia to start green hydrogen production for like electricity, right? And all that.
Yep.
Now, that's another thing that's coming. So all of these things for such a small country at once is saying, hey, guys, like, whoa, what's going on? We need to discuss, and we also need to implement this. So politically right now, Namibia is in, I would say, a bit of turmoil. Like nobody knows if they're coming or going as much because there's so much going on.
Are
But
you
yeah, my
involved?
political stance is basically Namibian for Namibians. Let's help
Yeah.
Namibia prosper and be what we all want it to be. Beyond little, I believe my party is better. That's cool that you believe that, bro. But what is it doing for the people on the ground? Are you building roads? Are you helping out at clinics? What are you doing that actually shows the people, yes, even the ruling party or the official opposition, what are you doing that people want to vote for you? That's my thing. It's like, do something, help the people.
So are you involved? Are you doing anything politically? No. Okay.
No, 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 no.
So,
I'm trying to stay away from politics and stick with Bitcoin adoption and education as much as possible. I do speak to people about politics every now and then, but I'm not running for anything.
and it's funny because I'm coming up to do a talk at a political party about Bitcoin. And I kind of, during lockdowns, I was going in two different directions at once. I got involved in a libertarian party here in Australia, and I sort of discovered Bitcoin at the same time. And ultimately, I took this fork in the road because which one's going to make the biggest difference at the end of
Yeah,
the day? And
yeah,
my heart and soul and my passion and my sense of what's going to change the world is with Bitcoin. Whereas I don't think the Libertarian Party, much as I love what they stand for, are going to make the difference that Bitcoin will. So I'm absolutely with you on that. Let's just do a little detour on how you ended up at Bitcoin. So your father was a journalist, you grew up with words, but you really took that to a whole other level in your career. Your career has really all been about words, from poetry and to lyrics and
yeah.
rap artist, and a substantial, like a well-known rap artist. So take us a little bit through, because not everybody will know this about you. Take us a bit through that journey, if you wouldn't mind, before we get to the Bitcoin piece.
Okay. Well, that's actually also a great story that I've told maybe twice. So the way I got into writing poetry was twofold. One, I found going through like documents. I think I was grounded for 6 months one time as a child, like the only time
Six
I ever got
months.
grounded. Yeah, it was crazy.
What was that for? What did you do?
People thought I was sent to military camp or some shit. I was just at home. No, I got accused of some stuff at school, but like I was SRC. Like I ended up being an SRC member, and the one teacher just, I think she had it out for me. And she was like, "Nah, Okin's a bully." What? Told my mom, and my mom was like, "I don't want you to speak. You just listen. You don't get to do anything. You just go to school, swimming practice, home. No TV, no friends, no phone calls. Don't ask me to go
Ooh,
nowhere."
oh, that's harsh.
So like, I mean, now look, it was all right. So I just did my time, I guess. And I was going through books because like we have an immense amount of Encyclopedia Britannicas. So like the old real like
I remember them.
volumes of these things.
Yep.
So I would just go through them and be reading stuff, because bored. I can't watch TV, can't play TV games. So I'm going through and I find this letter, right? It's on blue paper and it was written on a typewriter. And I'm like, what is this? And I read it and I'm like, what? This is a poem from dad to mom. And
Oh.
and with the spelling mistakes that he like etched out and all of it. And I'm reading this thing and I'm like, wow, dad, that was macking over here. He had words. Okay, okay. And I gave it to my mom and she's like, hey, that's mine. Don't touch my things. I'm like, okay, cool. But that was my first introduction to thinking about poetry, was literally from finding a poem that
Oh.
my dad had written for my mom when they were dating. Like I found from back
Yeah.
then, right? That's crazy. Saw my mom with a mad afro. I was like, wow, okay, this is what you people look like as kids. And then I discovered Tupac Shakur. And not just the rapper Tupac Shakur, but his poetry books, right? So
Yeah.
like The Rose That Grew from Concrete. Like I went when I was already 14 years old. I went to the US. I went with cousins of mine. They flew me out there. So I was in New York. I was in North Carolina. I was in Raleigh. I was in a couple of different places there. And one of my cousins knew I was really into poetry. So he bought me the book, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And that thing changed my life. Like I was already scribbling, trying to put words together, thinking I've got something. But then I read this book and I was like, man, I thought this guy could rap, but his poetry is like speaking to me.
So what
And he
was it
just
about
really
it?
hard
Was it what he spoke about? Like how did he, can you
how
describe
he spoke
how
about
he
it.
put
It
his
was
words together?
how he wrote the words. Like, because the way Tupac wrote, like if you look at his writing, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like he wouldn't write the word four. He'd use the number four, right? And even the way he'd use his capitalizations would help with how you read the poem. Like the man just wrote in a very poetic way, but like a street poet way. The way that he would speak would be the way he'd write. And in that, you'd see the tone, you'd see the cadence that he's using, you'd see all of that, and it'd be like, I never knew you could actually say it that way and write it that way, but make sense. Right. So it started becoming like wow, what else? Let me see what else I can find about poetry and stuff. And I started reading up. I think my favorite poet of all time is still Maya Angelou, like hands
Oh,
down,
yeah.
mind-blowing poetry there. But so I started writing, really writing at the age of like 13, 14. I wrote the first chapter of what would become a four. Because at first it was a book, just that one chapter, and then I got older. I kept writing. My writing style changed. Started speaking about things that were more prone to my life, and then it just as got another chapter, got another chapter, got another. Ended up with like 4 or 5 chapters, over 250 poems. Didn't lose a single one since I was 13. I still have them all. Never released the book. I was supposed to, but yeah, life happened. And then just kept writing. And then one day I got a phone call. I was in Cape Town because I did my bachelor's degree. So I got my honors degree in business studies from the University of Greenwich, but I did it through distance, right? So I did a distance learning through CTI in Cape Town. And while I was in Cape Town, one of my now band members, Ali, that dude, hit me up and he was like, yo, bro, I'm in Cape Town. I got a show. I need somebody to open up for me. You do nice poetry. So I need you to get on stage and speak a poem. And I'm like, I've never spoken a poem on stage before. What's wrong with you? And he's like, well, today's going to be that day because I need you, my brother. And I was like, all right, cool. So I got on stage. I did my first poem ever in Observatory. I think that was 2012, 2009, 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. The first time I did a slam poem ever.
How cool would it be if it was on the 3rd of January 2009? I think you need to look up the date of that.
I might have to look up the date just to make sure. So that would be crazy. But yeah, that was the first time I did a stand-up poem. And then I started writing for different publications in South Africa. I Speak Hip Hop in Joburg. What was the other one? The Soapbox gave me, actually, it was crazy. They gave me a whole section on their website, which was a forum for South Africans, like creators and whatever. They gave me a whole part. They created a poetry section and were like, hey, Okin, this is now you. Write us poems. So I was like, okay, cool. Wrote them about 20 poems for that thing, a couple of poems. And then from there, I got offered a writing internship, wasn't paid for it, but for Cape Town Street Mag, which was a really big print publication and online publication back in like late 2000s, 2009, 2010, around there. And then they were like, yo, we want you to write like 50 poems or something for it. I think it was like 26 poems or 40 poems, whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. So like, you guys want me to like every week release a poem? They're like, yeah. So I was like, all right, bet. I sat down for 2 weeks. I wrote 40 poems and I just released them one by one to them. And they were like, oh, we love these. And then, so I started making a name for myself in Cape Town. Started being known as Nikolai TNB, the poet. Did a couple of performances. Then, coincidentally, I came back to Namibia, finished my degree, was working in Cape Town for a while, partying, was fun. Came back home, 2012. I got a phone call from the same guy, Ali, that dude. And he's like, hey, bro, we were putting together this rap group and we need a poem. Can you come through and just, come into the studio and do a poem for me? I'm like, all right, cool, man. I'm gonna bring. And at the time, I had like a stack of papers that I printed out all my poems. And I'm like, all right, these will probably work for rap. And I went through and we created, and I even remember the date that we recorded it was my mother's birthday, the 17th of May, 2012. We recorded the first song of what would become Black Vulcanite. The song was I Hope They're Right. And that song ended up getting us a record deal in South Africa. We were written about in Rolling Stone. We were put on as one of the best hip hop songs of the top 100 best hip hop songs of all time through Rolling Stones magazine. So yeah, we did a lot with Black Market. It was a great journey. We released two projects. One was Remember the Future, which was totally done for free. The beats were given us by free. A guy flew from Switzerland to Namibia to make the beats with us there, and then we recorded with him. And then we went to Cape Town. He took him with. We signed our contract for Rude World Records, and then we were all together like the whole time. It was a great experience that I would never. Yeah, I thought that I'd actually
So
get.
cool. Like cool at so many levels. I mean, the success and the fame that goes with it, the sense of being around that level of creativity, being
Yeah.
around so many creative people at the same time, and then you've got the partying going on as well. I mean, it's just like a hotbed of everything that's good in life, right?
Correct. And then I got an opportunity, because things were not after 2009, all of us were in trouble financially. We were like, I mean, that ripple effect was global.
Oh, wow.
And then jobs were not, very forthcoming. I got laid. I actually worked for a bank. I worked for a bank and they fired me because
Oh,
I went to go
really? What
perform.
for?
Yeah. I was actually the service champion. Like they gave me an award and then fired me in the same month. I went to go perform and I had no more leave days and like it was a whole thing. The music had me in a grip, so I was like, I'm good. So yeah, they fired me. It was all good and well. I ended up working with my brother a lot because he at the time he was into commodity trading. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where I was also like gold, diamonds, talking about to people about it. Like, so this wasn't like a very foreign thing to me when I got into Bitcoin, really.
Right.
And then 2016, I got offered to go do my master's. I got offered a scholarship by the University of, by the government of China. They paid for my entire master's degree. I
Wow.
had to pay for my flight to China. So I sold my car, bought a plane ticket, went to China. I was there for 2 years. While I was there, 2016, 17, 18, because late 2016 is when I went. I started doing poetry there too. So I was like, hey, look, let's look for a poetry scene. Started going to things. And then I went to what was called Spittoon. Spittoon is great. I love those people.
This was in
Went to their
China.
events. Yeah, this is in Beijing. Spittoon is, and then
Beijing.
not only Beijing, it's Beijing, Shanghai. They've now
Yeah.
expanded throughout China, but they started just in Beijing. And I went to one of their events and they were like, look, you're the new guy, so you'll have to open up. I'm like, no problem, bro. I got this. And they're like, you have to do a 7-minute set. I'm like, don't worry, we'll do this. That's 3 poems stitched together. We're good. And I got up on stage and I'm like, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. My name is Okin. And I'm going to do a set for you. And then I did my set. And people were just staring at me, like nobody clapping. Like the people that I came with, they were like, yeah, good. And everybody's staring at me. And I'm like, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? Did I swear at somebody? And then I saw the second person perform, and the third, and the fourth, and everybody's standing there like this, reading their poems.
Oh,
And I'm performing my poems. Right? So they're like, what is this? What is this guy doing? Where's the paper?
oh.
How's he remembering all this? So
So
they
they were
created a
just
whole new
stunned.
they created a whole new section of poetry, right? They were like, no, Okin, you can't come to the reading nights anymore. We've now got a Spittoon slam poetry thing that you're heading up. Choose your teammates and y'all go do that. And that's how we
I
ended up.
never, this is embarrassing, but it just never occurred to me that there would be like a slam poetry scene in China.
Oh,
So,
it's massive.
really?
Massive. It's
Oh my
massive.
God.
It is huge. The poetry scene in China is insane. Like the events are almost daily. They have competitions from like different camps. So like I won second place at the first Beijing slam poetry competition. I should have won first, but I forgot my words. I mixed it up. So I kind of eliminated myself from that running. But I got second place, and I was very proud about getting second place out of all the poets that were on stage. And this is people not only Chinese. So you had Chinese poets, you had guys from Zimbabwe, guys from America, ladies from UK. Like it was basically like an international poetry slam competition, right? Which I felt
Are the
very proud of getting second
Chinese
place.
doing it in their local language or
Hey, some are, and some mix between English and Cantonese, depending on which part of China they're from. Like, so
yeah.
it's really a cultural, like, yo, we're all here. Let's have fun. Let's see. And then, of course, the guy that won first place, we were in the same poetry, like spittoon thing. So we started a friendly battle that every time, because you won first that time, I'm winning now. And we just keep going. Like, so that became a really fun thing for me in China while I was studying. Yeah. And then when I came back to Namibia, I fell into Bitcoin.
Okay. And was that through your brother and through the commodity trading that was going on,
No,
or how did
no, no. So the crazy thing with Bitcoin was becoming Phil, who's actually the guy that ended up orange pilling me. He was trying from 2012. So he's actually a producer as well, right? And he used to produce songs that we would like rap and do poetry and sing on and stuff. So that's how also I've always known Phil. And 2012, he was like, bro, I need you to look into Bitcoin, man. Like, I'm mining this thing. He was already mining back then on his CPUs. Like I'm mining this thing. This thing's going to be the future. You need to look into it. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about it. I want to party. I'm trying, dude, we just signed a contract. I don't want to hear about no Bitcoin. And then I went to China, right?
Yeah.
In China, people are like, oh, can you seem like a smart guy? Come with us to this blockchains event. And I'm like, no, I'm here to do my MBA and maybe meet the love of my life. I'm not going to a blockchain event with you. So I didn't go to any of the blockchain events in China. When I got back home, I started a consumer insights and marketing research company, right? And I was getting jobs from South Africa. Things were great. And my brother was in Dubai. And he was like, bro, I need you to send me some cash. So I was sending him some cash via Western Union and whatnot, right? Because also for him to swipe his card is crazy sometimes. I said, the charges are wild. You know how banks are. So I was sending it, and then one day I complained on Twitter. I was like, man, these Western Union charges are killing me. All this printing of paper and all of it, it's just an expense. Becoming Full hits me up and it's like, I done told you before, Bitcoin is the answer. Why don't you just send your brother the stuff in Bitcoin? We'll have it in less than like a couple of minutes. And I was like, you know what? Call me. I called him. I was like, let's talk me through this. How do we do this? And not even half an hour later, I had already purchased the Bitcoin and I had sent it to my brother. I had him download a wallet and he had the Bitcoin. He was like, how did you do that? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. That was how I started the journey. That's how I started, finding out what is Bitcoin? How do I do this? Like, what is what is a node? How do I run one?
Before we go right down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, did you meet the love of your life in China?
No, I did not. I did not. Yeah, China is a wild place. I must tell people, like, there's a difference, and I always tell people, you need to, especially Africans, I tell Africans, think of the way the West speaks to you about China as the way that the West speaks about Africa to everybody else. Like, if you speak to like an American about what is Africa like, they go tell you there's huts, there's what. Bro, have you seen Ghana? Like, that thing looks like Las Vegas. Like, there's places here that are wild. Beyond your dreams, you'll be like, oh my goodness, how do you even sleep here with all these lights? But the narrative is Africa is poor. There's no wealth there that the Africans have for themselves. They have to come out of Africa to be able to, that's not the truth. So when I went to China, everybody was like, oh my goodness, it's China. Your freedoms will all be gone, man. I went there and I obeyed their laws. And I was fine. Like, firstly, in my country, you can't drink in public. You're not allowed to drink in public, right? Because they say people would be rowdy and there'd be violence everywhere. In China, you can drink. When they told me I could drink in public, I grabbed a beer. I stood next to a police officer and I downed it. And he was looking at me like, what is wrong with this guy? Why are you standing here? I was like, wait a minute. We can drink in public here at the parks and no problems. Right? I think I only got into like one altercation in China, and it wasn't with a Chinese guy. It was with like some white British guy that was drunk and just being obnoxious. So like, again, in China, cameras are everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. They will see you doing what you're doing. Somebody's going to see you, right? So crime isn't that prevalent. There's no guns in China. The police don't even have guns. Okay, so that's already like whoa, wait, what? It's a totally different way of living and being. And people will tell you, Chinese people will tell you, you'll be like, hey guys, I don't understand why you do things like this. They'll be like, excuse me, this is China. Huh? China, this is our country. We do it like this here. You go back to your country and do it how you want to do it there. So Chinese people have their own way that they have decided they also want to do things. No matter what the Western or African people think about how they do their things, that's how they do it.
Hmm.
And I don't think we should be able to dictate to them how to do everything in their world. You
Of
know,
course not.
of course, they are human rights violations. They are in every country.
Yeah.
Every country has human rights violations.
Yeah.
Why everybody tries to pick on China, I don't know. But it's crazy there. It's wild. It's the future. I'm not gonna let you.
Okay. How's your Cantonese coming along?
Oh no, it's rubbish. It's the only thing I always feel. Like, I suck at all
Is that a
languages.
problem? Is that a problem when you're there?
Not really. I mean,
No?
most
Okay.
devices translate everything. Menu items, you take a picture, it will translate, tell you exactly what's there. So again, things like dog meat, they don't just give you dog meat. You will pay for that dog meat. It is not, it's a delicacy. You're going to pay that price. Now, people are like, why do Chinese people then have to eat dogs? You have to understand that their Great Depression was immense, right?
Yeah.
When a lot of people don't understand, when China went broke, the way they went broke also was all because of corrupt officials overestimating. Like, so when they would go to government and say, we have so much grain, they would get paid by government, right, for the grain. So they would overestimate how much they had. And then China said, hey, guys, our neighboring countries need aid. Let's give it to them because we have enough. And then just to come find out after they gave, they didn't have enough. So they went into a massive, massive depression where even just to fix glasses, you needed tokens, right?
Yeah.
And 3 tokens in order to get a token to get your glasses fixed. Things like that. So when Chinese people speak about money and the way that they come out of that to be as prosperous as they are, they don't worship money. For them, money is nothing more than a tool. A
Yeah.
tool. That's it. You will not find a Chinese person that worships money like us in the Western world and in Africa where worship. They do not do it like that. For them, it's a tool that they know how to use really well. Really well. It's
An
crazy.
interesting
Yeah,
take.
yeah,
Okay. All right,
pretty
let's
much.
get back to Bitcoin. So here you are. You've got your mate who's been pushing you to do Bitcoin. You cop these fees with Western Union, which has got to be one of the most corrupt businesses on the planet. How they're still alive, I don't know. And tell me, okay, so then your mate starts orange pilling you some more. So now you've seen the tech in action. You've sent your first Bitcoin. You're going, oh my God, it happened so quickly. The shock of that. I know, how cool is that moment, right? When you send your sats. And I remember going, I wanted to text and go, I've just sent them to you. And this guy gets back to me and goes, I got them before I had a chance to
It's
say,
excellent. Yeah.
amazing.
And the crazy thing is, at this point in time, there was no Lightning Network yet, right? Lightning Network
Right.
hadn't been
Yeah.
adopted
Okay.
by
So it's all
Bitcoin.
on chain.
It was still on chain. It was like a 10, 15 minute, but he got it. And like, I was the whole time like, oh my goodness, it left my wallet.
It
Where did
could
it
be
go?
lost.
Get there. Like that first transaction, you like losing your mind. Like,
Absolutely. The
and
first
then
time I
it confirms.
the first time I simply transferred off exchange onto Cold Wallet. Oh my God, I was just shitting myself.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like one of those things where you're just like, please go through, please don't fail, please don't fail, please don't fail. And it went through. I need to tell somebody. And then it's really like, I need to tell somebody that this happened. So yeah, so when oh wait, sorry, but you were still saying, let me not interrupt you.
No, let's just pick up from where you were. So here you were. So now you're doing that. You see it happen. And you're like, wow, awesome. And now you go down the rabbit hole. So you start studying, learning, playing with the tech. Yeah,
No, not first. At first, I literally, there's this meme that says Bitcoin, shitcoin, and then Bitcoin only, right?
yeah,
It's
right.
literally how it's built up. That was me. I was like, okay, cool, Bitcoin. But maybe I'm late. How do I find the second best Bitcoin? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
literally started looking for it immediately. Oh, they said something about an Ethereum. Oh, what's Solana? Oh, there's Cardano. What are these things? Let's start reading. Oh, let's start trading. So what I started doing was I went the digging way first. I was like, okay, we're gonna find a way to make money. So I started researching how to trade. I literally for I think about 4 months was just reading trading books, testing out trading strategies, putting a little money up to okay, we won it, but we lost it,
Yeah,
but we won it, but we lost it.
I've
But
done
like
this.
testing out all exactly right. We all thought, okay, again, COVID had hit. We was in COVID time now. So I had time. I was like, let's
Yeah,
go. So okay. Started doing that. And then I was like, wait a minute, man. There's something's wrong here. Let me do some more research. Started reading a bit on Bitcoin, right? No, not a lot, just a little bit. And being like, wait a minute. This is it's at this point in time now, I'm halfway through my first season of being a podcaster, right? So I have a podcast that I started up during COVID called From the Jump. And the point of this podcast was to speak to creatives that I knew around the globe that I've worked with, or we've always said we wanted to work, or we just partied at some place, and being like, okay, guys, let us have the conversations that will show the human side of you guys as creatives, right? To your fans and audiences and supporters. Basically, we had the conversations that happen when the camera goes off. Yeah. The things creatives talk about when there's no camera around, no interviewers, no fans, all that rubbish. That's what we were talking about on the podcast, right? And it basically started picking up. People were like, oh, that's cool to know. And the first episode I have, funny enough that I'm on a podcast with you, because the first podcast episode I had was with 1/6, who's a rapper slash poet in Melbourne. He's actually Namibian. He's my cousin. So he was born in Australia, but his family is like from here. His brother's there as well. They're both there. And the mother, I think, is also there. Yeah. 1/6 is still there. He's a crazy rapper.
I could go and see him perform.
Most definitely. I think him and his wife, because she's also a creative, they just had a performance somewhere in Melbourne.
Awesome. Okay, I'll look him up. Great. Yeah.
So he was like, yo, and we were just talking about it, but I was recording the entire conversation we were having. And I told him I was gonna. So it ended up being a 4-hour conversation. And then we edited that. I just edited that down, and that was episode 1. Then I just started speaking to a lot of different creatives I knew, guys in America, Germany, US, wherever. And I was like, I got a schedule, let's do it. And then while doing this podcast, I was like, how do I monetize this thing? Because now all of a sudden, I'm starting to get people in Lithuania listening to my podcast. I've never been in Lithuania, but okay. Guys in South America are listening. Okay. How do we monetize this? So first I decided, let's first go full force. Let's make sure this podcast is everywhere anybody needs to be able to access it. And one of the ways was I got on iHeartRadio, because when you're on iHeartRadio, that means you are automatically on every single one of those, what are those Android devices you speak to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could be like, Alexa, play Alexa, from the
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And Alexa would play From the Jump, but you have to be on iHeartRadio for that. So only way to get
I'm
in.
writing that down, man. I didn't know that.
It's how you get in. That's how I got in. Also, get off of Spotify if you're on there. The terms and conditions mean they can re-release all of your content as theirs and not give you anything. That's why I got off Spotify as soon as I could. But anyway, so through this journey of how do I monetize, I stumbled across value for value podcasting with Adam Curry them. And I was like, wait a minute, this is great. You're telling me I just take this RSS feed that I already have and throw it up on the index, and then any Bitcoin app that has podcasting in it, somebody will be able to listen to me. If it's Breeze, that time Fountain wasn't there yet, but Breeze was there. So I was like, cool, Breeze, you can listen through my podcast, and while you're listening, you can tip me. You can literally stream payments to me. So I got on that. And then I didn't know at the time, but I was the first African podcaster to do it. So Adam Curry, them got in contact with me. We're like, yo, we'd like to interview you for our 1-year anniversary show. Would you be willing? I'm like, of course I'd be willing to. And that's where he told me, no, you're actually the first African to do it. Like nobody else has been on that. So that's one accolade I also have, is I'm the first African podcaster to get onto Value for Value and be paid in Bitcoin for it. And awesome. Then I was like, how do I show people this, right? Because I can't keep this knowledge to myself. I know other people with podcasts. Let me show them how they can also get paid for this. That's how I started the journey of like, let's start educating people in Bitcoin. And of course, to get a podcast on Value for Value, like to be able to do that, you need to run a node, right? You have to run a Lightning node, because that's where the payments come through to. Now, then I was like, okay, cool, let's look what is a Lightning node. Started looking into that. First one was Umbrella, of course, easiest Lightning node to install. And then the more we went into it, I was like, hold on. Now remember, this is 2019. I had not done any command line, 2019, 2020. No command line. Don't know how to code, none of it. Today, I run 3 different nodes, some in a virtual machine. All of these things being done in command line. Wow, okay, which Bitcoin led me to a journey of, upskill yourself. There's now, you can get this knowledge. Okay, it's there. Just go and do the reading. Yeah. And then once I started doing that, I said, okay, cool. COVID or lockdowns ended. Not that COVID ended, but lockdowns ended. And I was like, all right, cool. We can start throwing events now. So then we started throwing the first, what I call TPOC events, the Pursuit of Knowledge events. And the whole point of this was the guy that Orange pulled me right, becoming full, he's actually, this guy's he's wild. People say I work a lot, but he had the first Bitcoin company in Namibia, right? An on-off ramp to buy and sell your Bitcoin through, which he still owns and runs still today. It was the first registered Bitcoin company with the Bank of Namibia, right? So fully registered, no problems with getting Bitcoin through him. And then at the same time, right, he had like 3 kids, like him and his wife, they were like raising like toddlers, and he's doing all of this while also orange pilling people. He came through to the event to tell people about Bitcoin. And at the time, remember, I was still kind of shitcoining a bit. So I was a brand ambassador for Brave at this point, Brave browser.
Yep.
And I was literally telling people about how you can get paid. Because now the whole thing was, how do I get Namibians paid through this entire, crypto, whatever you want to call it, sphere? And I started, okay, there's Brave browser, there's Zebedee where you can play games, there's XYZ, there's what. So that's what we did at this event, was to show people, look, you don't have to buy Bitcoin, you can actually earn it through these different means and ways. And then this is how you can use BitRefill to buy your airtime for your mobile phone using Bitcoin that you've earned. And I've been on this journey for a while now, trying to show people that you don't just have to purchase it. Like, first, let me show you how to earn it, and then from there. What we did with that show was, just to further emphasize it, I got a sponsor, right, for that show. And it was a man that owns hospitals around the country. And he said, okay, let's see what you can do with this. So I took that money he sponsored, I bought Bitcoin. And then from the ticket money that people bought, right, for the tickets that they bought, I gave them back half their ticket money in Bitcoin. So when they came to the door, on the ticket, it literally said, download this wallet and then come to the show. And then when they came to the front door, I was like, did you download your wallet? He's like, yeah. And I go, cool. At that time, we were still using Moon. And then I would give them half the ticket money, and I'd be like, go on in. So while they were sitting there for like that 2-hour session, they're looking at their Bitcoin become more, I don't know why, but Bitcoin, like, fiat price increased in that 2 hours. So like, wait, calm down. Let's explain to you what's going on, right? And that's where we started this whole journey of like, okay, let's make sure people really understand what's going on. They don't get scammed. Because most people are like, no, Bitcoin's a scam, I lost my money. I'm like, no. You gave your money to a scammer. Bitcoin had nothing to do with this, bro. There was probably never any Bitcoin bought. You just saw a number on a screen that they showed you, and you decided that was Bitcoin. That's not how this works. So that's where we started the journey for that.
Okay. And so where are you at with it now? Because you're running more than one business in this space, aren't you?
I am. So what we did was, after running the events, it was a thing of, because I was on Binance, right? That's where I was doing some of the trading as well and stuff. And that's where I was predominantly buying my Bitcoin through. And then I was like, man, to withdraw from Binance cost me like 300 Namibian dollars, right? Just to withdraw. So if I've only purchased $400, I'm going to get 100 out? That makes no sense. I was like, okay, cool. I might be able to afford the withdrawal fee because I'm buying like 1,000 and like 300 goes off, whatever. But how would the average Namibian, the guy that's a gardener, the person that's pumping gas into your car, the lady that cleans your house, how do they afford that 300 fee, even if they want to get Bitcoin? They don't. They just, it will set them off. So I was like, okay, we're going to have to find a way to be able to make it like 20 Namibian dollars, like the same as going to go buy cigarettes. We need this to be. And then I did research and I found Azteco. Now I was like, wait a minute, this could be the solution. It's basically how people redeem airtime. We already understand that mechanism. And now it's even easier because you can just scan a QR code. All right, cool. So I contacted them, became a vendor for Azteco. Again, got an investment from a very gracious angel investor that was like, yo, just go do what you said you were going to do. And once you've done it, then we can talk about paybacks or whatever, but first go do it. So okay, cool, took that money, started running around, like, showing people, hey, look, we buy you a $5 voucher, what. And I was talking about it so much at the place that we actually threw that event that they were like, you know what, Nico, we'll accept Bitcoin for beers and burgers every Thursday. Just, you must be here. I was like, cool, let's do that. Let's do this. So that was the first place, right? And after a while of them now accepting Bitcoin, like I think it was 2-3 months, they were like, hey, we'll take it for everything on the menu. And then what happened, in that meantime, they got a phone call, and I was coincidentally at the bar at the time, and they got a phone call from the Bank of Namibia, the central bank. And they were like, yeah, we hear you guys are accepting Bitcoin. What? We want to book a table and come through and see what's going on and how you're doing this. So the Bank of Namibia and the FIC, the Financial Intelligence Center, they both came, like 15 people at one table. And they were like, yeah, is that Okin guy going to be there? And they're like, yeah, Okin will be here. And I am losing my mind the night before. I'm like, wow, man, like, what if these people arrest me? And I do. But it wasn't illegal, right? I did all the research. I looked at the directives from the Bank of Namibia that said digital currency, we call them, I don't call them digital, what do they call them? Virtual assets. Virtual assets are not illegal in Namibia. That was in writing. So I was like, fuck it, we're good. We're going to go with that. We got there. I'm there. I see the whole table coming. I'm like, ooh, it's a lot of people out here. And I get there and I'm like, all right, how can I help y'all? And they're like, yeah, we want to buy burgers and beers. Now I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. Now this Thursday, reason I took Thursday nights is Wolf Shack's, like literally the slowest night is Thursday night. People didn't really go there on Thursday nights. So now this night, they don't have full staff. And these 15 people literally spent, I don't know, I think it was something close to 6,000 Namibian dollars in Bitcoin just on burgers and beers in one go. As soon as I start, now this is where the education became really important for me. These are bankers. They are bankers.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to explain to bankers what a custodial account is.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay.
Because they came there with their Coinbase accounts and wanted to use their Coinbase wallet to directly pay the establishment. I'm like, no, guys. Let me explain to you what happens with a custodial account, like an exchange account. You need to move it from there first to another place, and then you can spend it. So I showed them how to do that, got them all Moon wallets and whatnot at the time. Again, this was like almost 2 years ago. And then they were doing the purchases and everything. I mean, they were having fun with it. They were like, okay, it's working. And then I started explaining to them how they can do multi-sig accounts for the children and all of those things. And they were like, wait a minute. So I initially
where are
thought I was...
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just saying, I thought I was in trouble, whereas they just wanted to see how the technology works.
Amazing. So where are they at with it now in terms of they're thinking about it? So two questions. So one is about the adoption more broadly in Namibia, and the second is around regulation and where's that's at. Yeah.
So once we did the Wolf Shack, which was the first place to openly accept Bitcoin in Namibia, people started coming out the woodworks. Like coming to the Wolf Shack and be like, hey, why are you guys talking about Bitcoin? I've actually been accepting Bitcoin since 2014. And I'm like, why didn't you tell anybody, bro? Like, you're keeping it a secret. So what lodges have been doing is they tell their clients directly, you guys can pay in Bitcoin because it's international clients. But they didn't tell anybody around that they were doing it because they thought it was illegal, right? They didn't want to get into trouble. So now I was like, oh, so then we're even more people that have adopted that you just haven't said it to anybody. Then what happened was near my house, there's another place. They do paintball. It's a big area. Like it's a massive field that they have. They have a lot of things that they do there. Most of the corporates actually have their team buildings and stuff at this establishment as well. Their food is amazing. I mean, it's crazy. They have smoked briskets, everything. It's when I post about food on Twitter, it's normally I'm at that place or at the Wolf Shack. But Smoky Man's food is, I'm not gonna lie, it's crazy. So now I went there a lot. I was drinking there, and then the owner was like, hey, man, aren't you that guy that people are talking about Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah. You want to accept Bitcoin? He's like, show me how. I was like, cool. I showed him, set up a wallet, set up Breeze for him, and was like, let me show you. Let me buy this beer real quick. And then he was like, yo, that was crazy. Like, so I can earn the Bitcoin instead of me buying Bitcoin like I've been doing on Binance. I was like, no doubt. I'll buy stuff. He was like, everything on the menu. Pizzas, packets of chips, water, everything you can buy for Bitcoin. Paying for paintball and laser tag and airsoft, all you can pay for Bitcoin right now then, right? So then I was like, cool. Now I'm going to start having meetings here in Wolf Shack. So if you have a meeting with me, it's only at places that I can pay in Bitcoin. So whenever people were like, nah, this Bitcoin thing's a scam and you're lying, I'm like, oh, really? Okay, cool. How much is your tab? No, I had like 4 beers. Okay, I'll pay for his 4 beers in Bitcoin. Boom. And then they're like, how did you do that? And he's like, oh, you saw it happen. What do you mean? How did I scan the QR code and I paid? Yo, would you show me how to do that? Okay. So sometimes you just gotta show people, put it in front of their face and say, no, I'm not even gonna argue with me. Let me pay your bill, pay your beer. And then I'll show you how it works. And that started conversations up. And now we're talking to like I got I've been speaking to a lot of sport fraternities as well, football clubs, volleyball clubs, motor racing, because those type of things are more inclined to be supported internationally, right? There's a small, like my niece, she does racing, she's 13 years old, right? So I set up a Blink wallet for her, Bitcoin Beach wallet. And I was like, hey, my niece we were trying to raise like money for her for racing and for like a gas and whatever. Like she'll be like, she's a little black girl that's racing in Namibia. And people started sending her Bitcoin, like left, right, and center. And I'm like, and I gave her the phone and I'm like, yeah, that's your number. That's your phone. This is your Bitcoin. If you want to go buy chips with it or whatever, that's just your Bitcoin. That's up to you. But remember, you can save this for like your gear and like things that you need for your car. Right? She does karting. So that already started showing the other kids, oh, so we can also accept Bitcoin. Like, of course, I'll show you all how to do it. We can get this all moving. Because the thing is, people are afraid unless they see it. So adoption started moving a bit. It's still very, very much a creep and a crawl forward, because I am doing it for the most part alone. I'm trying to get people together that have orange pilled. And I've always said, like, if you orange pill businesses, they orange pill other business owners.
Yeah.
So that
and their customers.
Always help. Yeah. And their customers. They'll be like, we actually will give you a discount if you buy it in Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah.
AKA that. Same thing with me. I always tell people, live what you say. Like, if you want a discount from Okin, you can get one if you pay in Bitcoin. It's the only way to get one. I don't care how long you've known me. You need to pay me in Bitcoin to get a discount for any of my services, right? So then what happened was, as we moved along with this adoption, I was like, okay, I kept doing the studying. And I was like, wait a minute, Bitcoin mining is awesome. It sounds fun. Let's look into this. And I was like, wait, Bitcoin miners are crazy expensive on Amazon. This thing says made in China. Called up the people that I knew in China, because I was in China buying devices and stuff, right? Bought my computers, phones. I was like, yo, bro, can you get me Bitcoin miners? Like, of course, the stuff's made here. I was like, cool, I need 3. So I bought myself 3 Avalon miners, got them imported all the way, paid FedEx, paid customs, went through the banking, what were their questions, and now I was like, okay, this is how we import miners. Bitcoin Mining Namibia is a company now. We're going to start importing miners for people and showing them like all of how we do this. Started running my miners and ran them actually in the studio. I had the miners set up, was running them outside, because with our house in Namibia to mine Bitcoin, it's not like America and that you need step-up converters and stuff. We literally have the exact voltage that you need from the socket to run a Bitcoin miner. Exact voltage. So you just need 1 miner per socket, basically. Of course, you have to get an electrician to make sure there's no cross wires or whatever, but I literally plugged my miners straight into my household outlets and they were running perfectly. Of course, it took a lot of my electricity, but the whole point was to show that it's not only for people that are in Europe or wherever. No. Here's a Namibian showing you he's mining Bitcoin, showing you how much everything. I took videos of everything. It's all on my Instagram. And then I was like, okay, now we can bring miners through for people. So now we've already got Easy Sats, which basically is showing people how to easily get your Satoshis through Bitcoin vouchers. And we also do the education through that. And then we have BTC Mining Namibia that now brings down miners for people, or companies, establishments, whoever wants, and then also helps with the education on that to say, no. Don't listen to the FUD. Let's speak about what is energy. How is energy consumed and how is it moved? Because Bitcoin miners don't create energy, so they can't create CO2 for that. Like, so you have to go through the whole, because what they give out is heat. You can use that heat in other things like greenhouses. Like, so that you start having these conversations and showing people the bigger picture of there is no waste unless you make waste. You can always repurpose something. And that's how we got to having the 2 companies, Easy Sats and Bitcoin Mining Namibia. Now, as soon as I started talking about mining, Namibians started getting a bit more interested. So people started calling from the coast, where it's a lot cooler than most of the country. And they were like, hey, I've already got a solar set up. What? Could I get a miner? I was like, actually, you can. Because I did the research, went to the municipality of the capital, and then found out what do they need to do net metering. Then I went through by the electricity department. Then I went to like one of the most expensive suppliers of solar in the country, because I needed to know what is the high of what it's going to cost for the solar panels that would be able to run these 3 machines and my household all at the same time, right? They gave me that costing. Then I went to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, because they have something that's called renewable energy financing, where you can apply for them to buy you your and then you just pay back. I think the period, something like 3-4 years payback period. And then I did the calculations. And actually, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, I found out, will give you up to about 95,000 Namibian dollars for your solar setup for your household, right, for a residential property. But for these 3 miners of mine and my entire house, the consumption was about, you'd need a setup of 75,000 Namibian dollars only, right? So you're already saving a 20,000 gap there, and your house is still being able to run. Now, because you're not buying batteries, which is the biggest actual expense when you do solar, you're doing net metering, which means you're using the grid of the city. The city's electrical grid is your battery. So everything that you produce from your solar panels, you push into the grid, and then you pull out what you need, which means your miners can run at night, even though you have solar, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Got that whole system together and said, now I can give this as a product to people and say, this is what you can do. You can now finance yourself this way. And then you just have to find your break even of when your machines pay back enough so that you can service your loan, and then you just run it back.
Clever lad. Okay, so where are the government at with it? Clearly they're not against it. Clearly it's all legal. Have they got regulation around it? Are they neutral on it, or are they supportive of it? And what are the chances you could ever move towards having it as a parallel, as a second working currency in Namibia?
Great question. I'm so happy. I'm so happy you asked that question. Like, no, and you'll see now why, right? So I would like to start at the end, but let's start at the beginning. So the guy that orange pilled me, he was called by government, well, not from government, more so the central bank called him and was like, hey, we'd like to ask you some questions about Bitcoin. And those discussions ended up being the directives around virtual assets. So like Bitcoin mining will never be taxed in Namibia, basically right now. They're just like, if you're doing Bitcoin mining, go ahead. We don't care, go ahead. But if you're doing like an exchange or you're running something like that, then they've started putting in regulations that you need to register with them, right? Like there's an ATM now as well. We have an ATM in one of the malls. It's a Bitcoin ATM. It's actually a crypto ATM, but I call it a Bitcoin ATM because I don't talk about crypto. But it's just linked to a Coinbase account basically on the back end. And that's how they do it, how they service this thing. Now, that guy registered, becoming full registered. When I went to the meeting to register, they were like, oh no, you don't fall under registration. So they've got different terms of how you have to register for certain things, like to buy an Azteco voucher from EasySats, right? This is a solution for the people that aren't rich. So we're not trying to sell $100,000 vouchers to you. Then I would have to register with the Bank of Namibia because I'd have to take KYC from you. We're selling under $5,000 a voucher. Because this is for people that need Bitcoin, but maybe don't have bank accounts. Maybe don't have KYC methods, right? But they can buy $50 worth of Bitcoin. So this is for the average person. This is not, for those trying to circumvent things and whatever. No, nobody does money laundering with $5,000. That's silly. Come on. You get what I'm saying? So even the bank, so what they did is they had public consultations. One of them, which I went to, and sat in with on what they're trying to do moving forward. Now I wouldn't say the Namibian government, I'd say the Bank of Namibia, the central bank, is of course listening to people like BIS and FATF and all that, and their regulations and what they want these banks to do. South Africa said, wait, we're not ready, and they got gray listed. So Namibia was like, oh no, we're not looking to get gray listed, let's move quickly. Forgetting that we're pegged to the South African rand. As the Namibian.
Right.
So whatever happens to the South African rand happens to us anyway. So here comes the second answer to your question. So firstly, the government is pretty much neutral on it, in the fact that we're trying to orange pill. Like right now, I saw what they were doing in the US with trying to orange pill. Was it US or New Zealand, where they were trying to orange pill the entire cabinet? So I'm thinking about starting that in Namibia, getting everybody 2 books, one, the Bitcoin Standard, and number 2, the simplest Bitcoin book ever written. Those 2 books, I think, would be enough to get, in their minds, the confidence to be like, whoa, we should really look into Bitcoin. So here's the answer to your second question, right? Namibia already has 2 currencies. We don't only have one currency. We are a dual currency country. We have the Namibian dollar and we have the South African rand.
Okay.
So we already understand having 2 currencies as legal tender. So adding the Bitcoin as a third legal tender, come on, guys. It's not like you don't understand how
It's a
another legal
no-brainer.
tender. Come on, let's just do it. So what they're currently doing, and I asked them very blatantly in the meeting, I was like, why are you guys doing all of this instead of just making Bitcoin legal tender? Like, you've seen what El Salvador's done. I sat in on the meeting because there was a meeting with a bunch of central banks. Central Bank of Namibia, Central Bank of South Africa, Central Bank of Nigeria, Central Bank of El Salvador. There was another one. I can never remember who the fifth one was. And all these central banks had a meeting that was chaired by the Central Bank of Namibia. It was online. It was like a 2-hour. I was in there. I was watching the whole thing, asking my questions, And then
was it recorded? Can we watch it?
Was it recorded? I'll try and see if I can find it.
Okay,
But
fascinating.
basically what came out of that entire discussion was, okay, you can't stop Bitcoin, guys. It's too late. Can't stop Bitcoin. But what we can do is what South Africa did was they created their own Ethereum box, basically. They made their own Ethereum to test out, like sandbox, to test out how they would go about implementing a CBDC. Okay. And even South Africa was like, guys, this is going to be extremely difficult, especially when you're talking about going from one government to another and how you guys are going to then, because what chain is your CBDC on? What chain is my CBDC on? Like, all of these things are very much questionable. And who decides the exchange rate of these CBDCs? Because then what are they backed? But all of this is like questions that they had already thought about and were discussing. Now, my thing is, guys, look at El Salvador. They are prospering. They've paid back their IMF loans. Like, what is the question here? Like, I don't get it. So they are actively in discussions around these topics, but we are also making noise. We're like, look what's going on. Be aware of what these guys are saying, because CBDCs will do X, Y, Z. I mean, they came out and they said they wanted the public to give them their opinions on CBDCs. They released this thing like 2 weeks into the month, and we're like, by the end of the month, you guys must tell us. And I was like, hold on. How do you want people that are uninformed on the topic to give you an informed opinion on the topic? That just doesn't make any sense. So I'll give you an informed opinion. And I wrote them a whole stretch. And I was like, y'all go and hear me on this topic. And again, my mother is in government. So I was like, Mom, read this. Give it to whoever's around you. And I started calling people and being like, listen, man, like, let's talk to, if you have somebody, an uncle, whatever, talk to them about Bitcoin, because if they don't know better, they can't do better. So you're going to have to first give them the information. And then that became part of the driving force of also why we do easy sets and the TPOC sessions. And then I hosted, you see, the thing is, people don't take information just because you give it to them, right? You have to be in the right setting. They have to be willing to listen to what you're saying. So what I did was I started just going on radio, and it would be people that normally used to interview me about music. Right? Now I'm sitting there, I'm talking to you about finance and asking you, what is money? And you're like, what do you mean? It's this thing. I'm like, oh, no, that's fiduciary media. It's a representation of money. What is money? And they're like, oh, what did you just ask me? And then we start having that conversation, right? And then it fizzled out because I think people were scared that the bank might, the government might come for them because they're letting Okin speak. Whatever it was, I was like, all right, cool. We'll just keep going. We'll keep doing podcasts, whatever. Then I got called up and been like, oh, Okin, I see what you're doing on Twitter. Would you come to the University of Namibia and speak to my entrepreneurial class? And I was like, oh, well, yes, I will. So then I got to lecture at a university class about, basically, I snuck in Bitcoin. She said she knew I was going to do Bitcoin, but it was like alternative means of entrepreneurs and companies being able to gain finance, right, within Namibia. And I was like, hey, look, you can go to all these things that can be stopped for you, or you can Bitcoin. And then I was like, now let me tell you why you Bitcoin. And literally for 2 hours, those people were sitting there listening to me attentively, asking questions. And I was like, here we go. Let's go. Let me answer them for you. Let's go. And then I started realizing, hey, I actually have a bit of knowledge on this topic. And then I started doing private sessions, like for industry heads. So people that are like really high up in like the oil industry, lawyers, judges, well, it's like, okay, get together, and I'll come through to one of your houses and I'll give you a session. And then did that a couple of times through how do you earn and how do you accept Bitcoin sessions. That's all we talk about. How do you accept Bitcoin? You as an individual, as a company, like we tell you, here's a non-custodial wallet, a self-custodial Blue wallet, and then here's a custodial wallet, Blink wallet. This is the one that you easily accept and you send here, and then from there you can send to cold storage or whatever you have your setup as. That's how we started that whole discussion, was just how do you accept Bitcoin? Then from there it was, forget buying Bitcoin. We're going to show you how to earn it. Because like I always use myself as an example. So weekly, the airtime that I buy, right? You buy a package with the airtime that then allows you, like, for 7 days to have 3 gigabytes of data, 500 SMSs, 90 minutes worth of calls or whatever, right? That cost me about 45 Namibian dollars. So what I do is the games I play weekly on Zebedee, the articles I read or write, all those things pay me in Bitcoin, right? And then I just took weekly that money and then through Bitrefill bought my airtime and then I was showing people, okay, well, look here. It's been a year I haven't spent fiat money on airtime. Just been buying it with Bitcoin that I've earned playing games, reading, writing articles, walking, all these different, using the tools that are out there that pay you. And then people started becoming more and more interested. They're like, wait, my child can, because I always say, hey, you know how your nephews and nieces want to play games on your phone? Don't tell them no. Download Bitcoin games and give them the phone. There you go. And then people started paying a bit more attention. It still is a journey for most people. A lot of them are still, because a lot of people also, even if the message is good for them and they don't like the messenger, they're not listening to the message. So it's also that you have to overcome is maybe they don't like Okin. And because they don't like Okin, they don't want to listen to the story about Bitcoin. So I need to find other people to tell the story too, so that it's not just Okin. And it's starting to slowly but surely, I think I've irritated enough people into reading the books and doing some of their own research. So it's starting to get their way. I have friends now that are telling other friends, no, my brother, you say you have Bitcoin, in which wallet? What do you mean? How did you buy the Bitcoin? No, on an exchange. Oh, you left it there, didn't you? And they start having that problem without me. And I'm like, that's where I start feeling like, okay, we're getting there.
And it is that thing of, it's like the adoption curve, isn't it? It's like that S curve. There's some particular law, or it's like that whole network effect that it starts slowly and then it snowballs and it gets that traction and then it suddenly boom, you know? And if it's a smallish population, you know, I mean, you've really got the same advantages in some ways as El Salvador in terms of, I mean, having said that, I don't know what the population of El Salvador is, but that ability for it to be widespread, you know, really quite quickly, you can get that mass adoption. And as you said, you've already got the two currencies, you've already got a government and a central bank that are at least open-minded on it, or at least neutral on it. At least they're not fighting against it. So you've got a lot going on for you to make this happen. It's really incredibly exciting.
Yes.
You know? And is there a part of the central banks and the Namibian government that wants to get out of? Does it currently trade in US dollars, like international?
As far as I know, they are.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they do.
And is there any part of them that wants to get out of that?
Well, I think there's still a lot more education that has to be done before we get to that point. To be honest with you, it's in everybody, and not just central banks. Everybody doesn't want to accept that what they were taught was wrong, or that it was used to manipulate you. And now there's actual other data here showing you there's something else. Because then you'd have to admit, maybe my degree isn't that great, you know? And a lot of people are their degrees. They are their jobs. So they can't just say, oh, okay, yeah, let's look into Bitcoin like that. I've spoken to bankers that are like, dude, I'd love to know what's going on, but I can't say that publicly because I work for the bank.
Yeah.
And if they know that I'm saying this, then, you know, and then there's others. So I'm like, okay, guys, don't worry. We'll have private sessions, because the thing is, you need the information. It's not going to stop what's coming because you don't know. And this is the problem that I have. A lot of Namibians don't know they need Bitcoin yet. They don't understand it. So the whole thing right now that's taking so long is the educational journey to say, guys, firstly, that money you deposited in the bank is now the bank's money. They just allow you access to it. They can stop giving you that access. So first understand that. Let's understand what is custody and how can you take self-custody of things, right? Then we move. But the thing is, everybody's like, how do I make yield? No, but the Ethereum's prices. And I'm like, I just need you to read something quickly for me, right? And let's just talk about how you can maintain your wealth instead of how you're trying to find yield somewhere and you become the yield. And that's the discussions that we have to have. But it is a slow burning process. Again, there are only so many, because also a lot of the people that call themselves Bitcoiners aren't. They'll tell you straight, oh no, you know, my Cardano stock is, and I'm like, what?
Because
Man, not a
Cardano's
Bitcoin.
big in Africa, right? Charles Hoskinson has spent all his time over there.
You see, Cardano was one of the funniest things to me, and I always use Cardano as an example. Like when Charles Hopkins in 2020 was talking of, he went to Ethiopia and was like, yeah, we're gonna put everybody's qualifications and stuff on the blockchain. So if a war breaks out or anything happens, you can go to the other country. And like I keep telling Cardano people, that is literally Google Drive. I already do that with Google Drive. I have copies of my degrees on there, and wherever I am, I can just send it from there. What am I saying here? You buying a token to be able to use Google Drive? Is that what you're doing? And then people were very angry with me. Right? They were like, Okin's an asshole. And I'm like, guys, look, I'm just being honest with you. Right? I also believed in Cardano. I thought it was going to work. I thought ETH 2.0 was going to be the one. I was staking that thing on Binance until I was not staking it anymore. And I sold all of those things because I realized, like, even Solana, I had Solana. I was like, hey, man, it's going to be the one. It's going to be the new Ethereum. I believe. And then you know what I started doing? I started reading white papers. I started being like, why are there so many books written on Bitcoin? Yo, where's the Ethereum standard? Where's the Solana standard at? Where can I find a book? And then I started being like, okay, let's look into more of the whys. Then, of course, I did the Bitcoin for Everybody course from Sailor.org. And brilliant course. I think everybody should do it. And then I did the Bitcoin for Developers course through Sailor.org. And then I just kept going. Kept going. Rabbit holes.
And the education is endless, isn't it? No doubt about it. What's the inflation rate in Namibia? Is it
actually see one? Or the reported one?
The report. Well, I mean that's the same all over the world, right? Though.
Yeah. Let me just quickly check Namibian inflation rate. I don't really look at this one a lot. Also, our basis points.
Is it something that's talked about much? Is it covered in the papers? Is it something that seems to be?
Yeah, it's there, but again, like I always say, how much does it matter when we're pegged to the South African rand? Whatever happens to the South African rand, we still get into trouble. Like the Central Bank of South Africa just pushed up their repo rate by I think 50 basis points. Now Namibia was like, don't worry. Of course, worry. It's going to come here in a month or two. Like, they say that the inflation rate in Namibia, okay, that's the other one. As of April 2023, the reported rate is 6.1%, down from 6.2% in the previous month.
You're about the same as us in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely higher, like 8 maybe.
And definitely higher in Australia too. There's loads of things they leave out of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index here. Amazing. I feel like I've been completely educated in this. And I'm getting conscious of time, and you've got to get on with your day, and I'm going to go in and see my husband and son in a moment, who I haven't seen since they got home. I'm always living and hoping and dreaming that I've got somebody absolutely brand new to Bitcoin on their show who's never seen and they stumbled across this thing and they were on YouTube, and then this just happened to be the thing that came up in their feed. If you had something to say to an absolute newcomer, and they could be from anywhere in the world, what would you say to them?
Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Michael Saylor. Don't listen to anybody. Go and read. Go grab the books, grab the articles, do the courses. A lot of these courses are free and self-study. You can do them at your own pace. You don't have to, I have to finish it this month. No. But go do the work. This is how scams proliferate. It's because people don't inform themselves on what is actually what. And the info's out there. You can go get it. You don't have to pay a consultant like me, but you can pay me if you want. I'll take your money because it's going straight into sets. But I'll take your currency, not your money. But go and read. Go do your research. Literally, you will thank yourself for it because you'll understand. Firstly, you don't need anybody to, as I call, do Bitcoin, right? To purchase Bitcoin, all you need to know is how to purchase it. You don't need somebody else to purchase it for you. Right? There's no need like that. You can mine it. You can earn it. There's so many things, but you have to go and find it out. So please read, grab the books, take your time. If it takes you 3 months, and I'll tell people straight, the Bitcoin for Everybody course is a 12-hour course. It took me 3 months. Why? I was so interested in the side readings and everything. I went to go read more stuff. I went to go read up on more stuff. When I heard the term fiduciary media, I was like, whoa, what is fiduciary media? Then I went on like a 3-hour reading of just like, wow, it's not even money, bro. So you go on a journey of a journey on a journey, and you really just start learning what you now see is the truth. And you're like, wow, okay. So please just read, not articles, because articles are also people's opinions. Go read those 300-page books, the 250, even the 100-page, go read them. And then read them again, think about them, criticize the book, ask the author some questions, do what you can, get into spaces and speak, but actively be part of your own journey in this. That's the only way this works. You have to actively be there. You can't wait for a savior. Nobody's going to be your savior in Bitcoin. So you have to be your own savior.
Ain't that the truth? You are absolutely inspiring. Amazing to hear you. You're just a wonderful ambassador, and Namibia is lucky to have you. And I wish you well in your journey, and I wish Namibia well in your collective journey. And really, my heartfelt thanks for coming on the show. Just an absolute.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I mean, I like to speak a lot, so that's always
makes my job easy.
This was really great. I do hope that you'll be coming to Namibia sometime soon with your family. We have some of the greatest meat in the world. We've only been the only other country that's above us is actually Argentina. That's how the ranking goes on Namibia.
I've heard amazing things about Argentinian meat, and I'm now doing like the full-on carnivore diet, so I'm totally.
So Namibia is definitely for you. You will enjoy eating meat out here. It's sunny almost 360 days of the year anyway, so it's just a great place to come and explore. We had some Bitcoiners come down. Sebastian came through from Portugal. He was doing an overland tour with his family. They rented motorcycles, and he actually uninstalled the place he rented the motorcycles from now, and now they offer motorcycle rentals in Bitcoin. So like,
fantastic.
It's not just about, if I can get more Bitcoiners here to show people the truth of the situation is Namibia has nomad visas where you can live in Namibia and work from here up to 6 months. Okay. Then of course, when you're coming from a place that is not Namibia, South Africa, your currency exchange is already pushing your value to where you can use a lot of it. And then we're very open with a lot of like helping foreigners find their way around the country. Even we always love treating foreigners really well because you guys are going to come back. that's always the great thing. So safaris, overland tours, balloon safaris, even there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do in Namibia. You can even go surfing on the dunes, and all these things is to say, my goal is to make sure at some point all of them say, yeah, we can also accept Bitcoin. It's not that we're saying stop accepting fiat. We're just telling you, you also now know you have the option to accept Bitcoin, and Bitcoiners will come down and happily pay for a safari in Bitcoin. You'll be like, oh, let me go to Namibia real quick.
I am sold. And as it turns out, my husband and I met through motorcycling. So the idea of doing a motorbike tour through Namibia is very, very attractive, along with everything else you said, along with the idea of potentially meeting your good self. That would be amazing to do it in person. It's been a pleasure meeting you online. I look forward to one day hugging you in person.
Thank you so much. This is a great conversation. You see, Bitcoiners, we're everywhere, and we're awesome.
It's too easy, and it's always beautiful. Be well, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Same to you. Have a great day.
You too.